the multiverse is true is
hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the INTP stream. I've got an argument. I've got an argument against the plausibility of the hypothesis that there is a creator, that we were created. Now, if you study for the LSAT, if you're a law school person like I am, you will have studied for the LSAT, and if you've used the power score method, you've covered how conditional arguments can be broken down into their component propositional parts. If-then statements can be broken down and diagrammed, and can be reduced to their fundamentals. Right? Arguments can be broken down and reduced to their fundamentals, and then you can analyze the legitimacy, the logical validity of arguments, of specifically if and conditional statements, and the inferences that come from those if-then conditional statements. You can diagram if-then conditional arguments, and you can diagram them in that way. And then using those diagrams, you can determine which inferences that come from that are valid and what are the common mistakes that might be made with that type of conditional argument. Now, I really wish that I had a whiteboard or that I could screen share. Let's see if I can do that. I really very much strongly doubt I could screen share. Let me try to find a pen. Let's find a pen first, and that way I'd be able to lay out the argument. Oh, good. Okay, I found a pen. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so you have this, right? So let's just test this, right? So you have, let's say argument for God or for a creator, which is synonymous in this way, right? Oh, that's going to be reversed. Okay, so I'm going to have to really engage in some mental aerobics here. Okay. In any case, I think it should be valid regardless. Let's see, maybe if I go over here. No, I'm not sure how to. Maybe I'll just try to invert it another way or write it out so that it actually makes sense. Actually, I know how to do it. I went through the mental aerobics, so now I know how to do it. Okay. All right, so the argument is this. And the argument can be summed up in this way, right? The argument for a creator. Humans are complex, right? So in that way, and life is complex, right? In that way, life is complexity. Humans are complexity within the larger universe. And essentially the statement is, if complexity, then creator, right? So in this way, it's something like, this is the way that you would diagram that, right? Let's make sure that I did this correctly. Almost. Almost got it. Now is it readable to you? The fuck, dude, I'm getting this. Okay, I'm sorry. I need to. Okay, so I'll just write it out this way. If that's that way, maybe it's this way. Yes, it is. Okay, I figured it out, guys. Okay, so basically I just invert it. Okay, you see that? That's the argument. That's the argument. If complexity, then there's a creator. Okay. Now, you learn when studying for the LSAT that there are valid inferences that can be made from these types of conditional arguments, and there are invalid inferences that can be made from these types of conditional arguments, right? And one valid inference is called the contrapositive of a statement. And total negation of a conditional argument is its contrapositive, and the contrapositive is always valid, right? So we're going to totally reverse this and totally negate it, right? So then it would be something like this. And then it would be something like this. Okay? You can kind of see that on the bottom there, the very last one, right? So that totally reverses it and totally negates it, which is to say the original statement, if there's complexity, then there's a creator. The total reversal and total negation of that statement is if there is no creator, there is no complexity. Does that sound like a valid statement to you? Right? If there is no, right? So the original argument, if complexity, then creator, right? The total reversal and total negation of that, if there is no creator, there is no complexity, right? Does that sound like a plausible statement to you? If there is no creator, there is no complexity. Is that really what you're arguing? Now, the title of this video is that conditional statement you just made, if complexity, then creator, when it's turned into its most fundamentally valid inference, it's contrapositive, and you convert it into that valid contrapositive, right? It makes for an absolutely absurd proposition. So taking your statement, if complexity, then creator, we, by the laws of logic, totally reverse and negate it, makes if there is no creator, there is no complexity. So even the most fundamentally valid inference of that statement, valid inference that can be made from that statement, the contrapositive, makes an absolutely absurd proposition, which is that if there is no creator, there is no complexity. That is fatuous. That is one of the most, anyone looking at that statement and thinking about it for even a second would think that that's a ridiculous proposition. Certainly there can be complexity in a universe without a creator. You know why? Because your creator, you'd have to agree. I'm going to cross-examine you a bit, right? So you'd agree that your creator is also complex, right? Most would not be able to get around that question, right? You'd probably have to agree that your creator is complex, right? So your argument, your original argument, going back to this, right? Going back to this, if complexity, then creator. Oh, fucked up, guys. Okay, if complexity, then creator, right? Your creator would also need to be complex, right? Thus, if your creator itself is complexity, it needs to be complex. You'd have to agree based on your original statement that your creator, your complex creator, which is complexity, would also require a creator, okay? So what that leads you into is an infinite recursion, and that's a basic logical problem. This essentially disproves conventional notions of a creator or ways to get around evolution, right? No, that argument you're making, it ends in an infinite recursion because the creator must also be complexity, must also be complex. And if that's the case, it requires a creator. Your creator requires a creator, requires a creator, requires a creator. At what point does it stop? You're also saying that if there is no creator, there is no complexity, right? That's fatuous. What did the creator it come out of? It had to be complex. For the creator, whatever the creator evolved, you see the point. You end with evolution, right? You're led into that infinite recursion. You can't have a creator that comes from nothing. The creator, by the logic of your conditional statement, requires a creator. So, yeah. And you can't get around that, right? It ends in an infinite recursion. And that infinite recursion is that the creator would require a creator, would require a creator, would require a creator. And it's because the creator itself is so complex that it too would require a creator, because it couldn't have emerged from nothing, right? So eventually, because you're arguing, right, the logic of your conditional statement, right? Again, just to make this a little bit more clear, is that if there's complexity, then there was a creator, then it was created, in other words. Well, okay, one, we turn that into its contrapositive, it makes an absurd proposition, which is that if there's no creator, there's no complexity. Fatuous. Anyone would have to agree. On the other hand, right, the argument ultimately detonates itself, because what ends up happening is your creator is complex, right? You're basically arguing if there's complexity, then there is a creator. Well, the creator is also complexity, right? Okay? And you're arguing that if complexity, then creator, leads you into the argument that your creator needs a creator. And ultimately, if we assume, going through your argument, that every creator must be sufficiently complex, then the creator is complexity. And if you're arguing that complexity requires a creator, then every time you posit a creator, a complex creator, you are positing the need for another creator, ending in an infinite recursion. So, because I was watching this video where, yeah, and I think that takes about as far as I wanted to go. That takes us about as far as I wanted to go, I think. So the basic argument, if complexity, then creator, ultimately destroys itself. One, because it turns into an absurd contrapositive. And two, the creator itself has to be complex. Therefore, if complexity, then creator, right? Well, the creator is also complexity because it's complex. Therefore, the same argument, this argument, applies to the creator itself, right? Which I diagram out here. It shoots off in this direction. If this argument applies to the creator because the creator is complexity itself and the creator is complex, still renders if complexity, then creator, implies that you're creator. So if your argument is if complexity, then creator, then that ultimately, that is a completely invalid argument just via the laws of logic, because it creates that infinite recursion problem, because you'd have to also concede that the creator is complex, is complexity. So the same argument would apply to it, creating the need for another creator, right? And thus, yeah. And then, if that same argument, then that same conditional logic statement that you're positing would then apply to the creator's creator, it would have to apply to the, creator's creator, and it ends in an infinite recursion, right? So what happens at the end? You're always arguing that if there is complexity, then there is a creator, and wherever there's a creator, there is complexity. So it ends in an infinite recursion. You're always in need of a new creator to justify your claim that we were created. And that's a problem. And that needs to be reckoned with. Not to be too militant, but it's an important point. Now, that's about as far as I want to go with this one. Although your argument tries to go much farther than I'm trying to go now. And it's just not a good argument. right? Because it ends in that infinite recursion problem. So one, the basic law of contrapositives takes your conditional logic statement that you're making, if complexity, then there's a creator. One, if we're applying the law of contrapositives, a rule of logic, creates an absurd proposition. If there is no creator, there is no complexity, which is absurd, right? An absurd proposition. So applying the law of contrapositives to your statement creates an absurd proposition, probably also indicating that your original statement is absurd, inherently absurd. Plus, your argument creates creates an infinite recursion, which is a logical problem, because if complexity then require creator, complexity also, the quality of complexity also applies to the creator. The creator is thus complexity. Therefore, the creator requires a creator because complexity requires a creator. Creates an infinite recursion problem. So at some point, you then have to concede, right, that if the creator needs a creator, and that creator needed a creator, and the creator of that creator needed a creator, you end this infinite recursion problem where do we start? Are you just going to posit that there was some creator that erupted ether and then created everything? Or are you going to argue that that creator emerged from evolution on some lonely planet at some distant point in time through natural selection? Or are you going to simply admit that it's possible that if the universe can pop into existence with no causality rules applying to it, then so could all of life and everything else, right? It could be that, it could certainly be the case, that if these things are, that we argue that the universe had no beginning and it has no end because it just is, right? Well, I mean, laws of causality really don't apply here, but if you're going to try to use causality to your advantage in your argument, you're going to have to do it in a more intelligent way. Not to say that it's a totally unintelligent argument. It's a perfectly intelligent argument that a complex thing, complexity requires some sort of creator, right? Yeah, that's not a bad argument. It's not a bad thought. It's not a stupid thought. But ultimately, the very proposition itself, in terms of the rules of conditional logic, the argument detonates itself because one, it creates an absurd contrapositive, and two, it creates an infinite recursion. So these are just points to take. I mean, it's really make you question whether you can go very far with the argument that there is a creator on the simple basis that things are complex. That doesn't mean there's a creator, right? I mean, there's that assumption is so flawed. Given sufficient time, right? Given infinite time, millions of years, evolution through natural selection and the normal mechanisms that are posited certainly could have occurred, right? Given sufficient time. We aren't saying it's not, or I'm not going to say we because I wouldn't agree with perhaps. I'm also skeptical of the theory of evolution in many ways. As it's currently detailed, but that doesn't mean that I think there's a creator. So I am both skeptical of the theory of evolution by natural selection through incremental mutation, and I'm also skeptical of the idea that there is a creator. I think there's probably a better version of the theory of evolution that lies somewhere in physics and mathematics that can reconcile some of the absurdities within the theory. But it's far more absurd, I think, to posit a creator based on the contrapositive and infinite recursion errors that very statement creates. So, yeah, hopefully all of this makes sense. Not my favorite topic, but I'm glad I was able to apply some rules of logic to a very conventional argument and claim. And when applying the demonstrably and evidently correct rules of logic to those claims, I've noticed two very distinct errors that arise from the basic conditional logic of that claim, which is a contrapositive error and an infinite recursion error. So, yeah, thanks for watching.